Now, as you know, I have been in the graveyard at St Mary's because I came over here today because I saw on the website that they were closed on Saturdays. But I decided, as I'm going to be here, I would do another story, a backup. And that would be the story on the grave of, or the gravestone of the Gypsy King, Edward Bozwell, who is registered in this church as being executed with two other gypsies in 1640. So I was killing two birds with one stone, to be perfectly honest. So anyway, I am now going to go over to find out that story. So as I already said, on March the 20th, 1640, Edward Bozwell, King of the Gypsies, along with fellow gypsies Tynymere Smith and Edward Smith, were executed on Griffin Lane at the junction where it meets the Bicester Road, about where the Charter pub is today, very near to where I work in Aylesbury. A gravestone was erected to Bozwell 5 days later just outside Quainton on the first day of 1641. March the 25th was the start of the new year until the 18th century. Now nobody knows for sure whereabouts the three gypsies were buried. It's unlikely to have been a graveyard or consecrated ground of any type, and the gravestone is probably not in its original position, but it is said it can be found on Carter's Lane just outside Quainton. Now, I've spoken to people from Quainton who I know, and they have never heard of it or seen it. Now, does that put an intrepid explorer with time on his hands like me off? No. So let's go and head off to Carter's Lane and search for the gravestone of Edward Bozwell, the King of the Gypsies, and Tynymere and Edward Smith. And I'll fill you in on what happened to him and his friends, and to some of the treatment handed out to these travellers in those times, when I hopefully get there. See you soon. So I've dumped the car because I fancied a walk. And in my research, I have discovered that if I go up Carter's Lane towards Long Marston, on passing the old Quainton Dairy in a passing place, you will find the stone. Now, it used to have an inscription on it which gave the date of the burial, the name Edward Bozwell, and the fact he was the King of the Gypsies. But the passage of time and weathering has worn away. Now, another version of this story was that a big community of gypsies who lived on Carter's Lane, so much so it was known as Gypsies Lane, that when the three men were hanged, their friends and families did indeed carry them all the way back to Carter's Lane and bury them. And for many years after, flowers were laid by gypsies travelling through. Now, who knows, but for the romanticism of this story, let's say they are buried underneath wherever the stone is, and if I can find it, I will be dead chuffed. Now, I believe I've found it, so I'm just going to double back now because I think it's here on the left. From the photos I've seen, it looks as though it may be here on the left. Now, I'm just going to check. It's a very empty road, so there's nothing around. But the pictures I've seen, it's in really nice mown grass. But I think this is it. And I'm going to have a look. I believe this is it. Can't see what it says, but I think it's it. Yeah, that looks as though it may be the stone. So I found it. Now, I'm really chuffed. Now, let's give you a bit of a background story about the gypsies. Well, in the 16th and 17th century in Britain, gypsies, or Egyptians as they were then known, no, I didn't know that, they are now known as Roma, were not welcomed with open arms by towns and villages in this country. So much so that Parliament passed acts from 1530 onwards to control the travelling population. Henry VIII forbade the immigration of gypsies, fining ships' captains or owners £40 for bringing him into the country. Any gypsies entering the country were hanged. By 1562, Elizabeth I calling for gypsies to be put to death and forfeiting all lands and goods. So I'm presuming that by 1640, when the gypsies were living on Carter's Lane, Quainton, things had calmed down a bit and gypsies were sort of living in harmony with the villagers without being in fear of their lives anymore. Now that is unless you were Edward Bozwell and Tiny Mere and Edward Smith, who were all convicted of horse stealing, which was still a capital offence, and hanged in Aylesbury. So here it is, the stone. Not that hard to find as it turned out, and not as big as the picture, the one picture that I saw of it. Up until today, when I managed to find 4 pictures of how it looks, and this is basically how it looked. So that's a bit of a mystery. I'll put a pic on of what I originally found online along with this video and pictures, and maybe someone knows if something happened to the stone, or if it was damaged, or if it fell apart, or if indeed there is another stone. So if you do, please drop me a line in the comments below or on Instagram and send me an email. Well, I hope you enjoyed that story. I enjoyed going out and trying to find it. Now, when I got home, I had a look at what I got online about the old photos that I'd found of Gypsy Stone. And I've got to say, I just think it was taken from a different angle, the first one I saw, which made it look bigger. And when I actually checked all the ones that I'd seen online, which was 5 in total, they did look exactly like that stone. The only shame there was really was that I couldn't see what the inscription said. But apart from that, it was definitely the stone. Whether it's in the place where they are buried or whether it's just been taken from where it was and placed there, we probably won't know, not unless somebody dug down to see if there's any bodies. But it's probably not the actual burial site. But anyway, it was still a very good search on a Sunday morning, looking for the Gypsy Stone involved in this little story which I managed to find, and I enjoyed it. So please, if you liked it, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.